A farmer's work is never done. While many farmers in the state continue to plant, others may want to consider scouting for insects. A repeated pest is the bean leaf beetle, but how big of a problem will the beetle or other insects be this year? Market Journal's Kurtis has the answer.
Most farmers don't want insect pests in their fields, but that's not the case with Tom Hunt. This University of Nebraska-Lincoln extension entomologist specifically planted his soybean research plot early in order to attract the devastating bean leaf beetle.
Bean leaf beetles are insects that overwinter as adults in like leaf litter and soybean stubble and tree shelter belts and alfalfa stubble, things like that. And then in the spring they come out very early, get into some alfalfa, and then they jump into the first beans up. So in order to do studies, we try to maximize the chance of getting bean leaf beetles by planting very early. So we're trying to do some bean leaf beetle work here, and hopefully we'll get beetles. Beans are just starting to crack through, and there were a few guys that might have got some beans in early, but we're one of the earliest ones that got this field in.
While Hunt may have planted his soybeans early to increase the number of bean leaf beetles, he hasn't experienced the results he was hoping for. Mild winter conditions across the state may have impacted populations of not only the bean leaf beetle, but other insects as well. Insects in the state adapt to weather conditions. During a typical winter, it is cold with snow on the ground. This snow can insulate above-ground insects as they are mostly dormant. Warmer conditions can have the opposite effect.
Bean leaf beetles overwinter above ground in like leaf litter, so they're not down in the ground typically. And so warm weather sometimes in the winter can cause their metabolism to increase. They move around, they start to become active, and what that does, it uses up the fat body reserves they have in order to get through winter. So either they get active and they might come out of their overwintering site somewhat, possibly then be exposed to then a spike of cold weather, or more likely they starve because they get active when there isn't any food. They use up their fat bodies, and they're not in very good shape when they do come out of overwintering and when we get to spring.
So far this year, Hunt has found few bean leaf beetles. He credits these low numbers with the warm weather, but also believes agricultural practices may have reduced populations.
Insecticidal seed treatments have become quite popular on corn particularly, but also on beans. And those are active against bean leaf beetles, and we may have actually seen some kind of general population reduction because of that.
While bean leaf beetle numbers may be low now, farmers should still scout regularly. An individual female beetle can lay hundreds of eggs, which hatch at different times during the growing season.
They do have two generations in this part of the Nebraska, so you'll have a batch coming out in midsummer. They'll mate and lay more eggs, and then we get the late summer population, which feeds on pods, and that's typically the most detrimental population.
Bean leaf beetles may not be an issue this spring, but Hunt encourages farmers to scout regularly for problematic insects.
When you have a winter like we had, things pop up, so you still need to be vigilant, because even if the bean leaf beetle isn't there, other insects that we might not be see as often might become an issue. Certain maybe lepidopteran pests, caterpillars, things like that.
Defoliation or webbing may be indicators of insect problems. For threshold or treatment information, visit entomology.unl.edu. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Kurtis.
Thanks, Kurtis. Dorn doesn't expect many insect control treatments will be needed during this early season, but encourages producers to continue scouting as population sizes can quickly change.